So the question is often asked, is it better to rent or is it better to buy? One of the factors that is important in making this decision is the cost of buying a property versus the cost of renting or the missed opportunity. Now, an excellent calculator is available through the New York Times. It's called the Upshot, and it's a great visual tool that will be of value if you want to look at this decision. And I just want to take you through this online tool, and I'll take you through the variables that are used to evaluate the decision and how you can personalize it and then evaluate the decision yourself based on the possible houses you might be able to afford and how that would compare to a relative cost of renting. That is the premise of this application. It's really for somebody saying, if I'm looking to buy this house, what would I be paying in rent to equate to the same cost overall? And if I could rent for less, it would make more sense to rent. And really, this application is driven by variables, and on the right-hand side, you'll see this green indicator bar. This is the critical cutoff point. It's in dollars per month, but if you divide it roughly by 4, you'll get a weekly rent. And what it's saying is, based on the variables you put in on the left-hand side, that indicates the point at which, if you're paying more in rent than that, it's better to buy. So let me just walk you through the variables. The first, whilst it's something we'll come back to, is really the house price that you think you could afford with a mortgage. An important consideration, and one that's often not taken into account, is how long you plan to stay in a property, because if it's a short stay, then rental will be of more benefit than purchase, not just for financial reasons. You input the various mortgage details of what the cost of the mortgage is, down payment and the term. All of these I'll come back to and personalize in a minute. So what does the future hold? This allows you to look at what the impact of future house price inflation and future rent growth could be, as well as to look at the investment return of the deposit, which is the alternative financial calculation of putting that 20% deposit into an investment and seeing how that would return you an income stream which would offset or benefit the cost of renting. You put in inflation as well. Then taxes. This is really about property taxes, which is effectively the rates of a property purchase, and tax rates for calculation of investment and payment of terms. In terms of closing costs, this is an American site, and although it is American, it's still using mathematical calculations. The cost of selling a home is an important consideration in the cost of owning a home. We don't have costs of buying a home, and I'll change that in a few minutes. Then there are calculator inputs on maintenance and renovation, insurance and utilities, common fees, those kind of factors. In addition, it covers the additional costs of renting in terms of, say, for example, a security deposit, broker's fees and renter's insurance. So very comprehensive, and as you can probably imagine, very easy to use. So let me just come right back to the top and start personalizing this for a hypothetical situation in New Zealand. Okay, let's leave the first two, which is the notional house price and how long you intend to stay. Let's put in the mortgage details. Now, currently mortgage rates are sitting at the high 6%, so let's actually put in 7% as a starting point on that. Leave the deposit at 20% because that's really the main mortgage lending criteria at the moment, and leave the length of the mortgage at 30 years. For the sake of this first calculation, I'll leave inflation on property at 3% and rent growth at 2.5%. Investment return 4%, probably a little generous in New Zealand, probably only going to get probably 2.5%. And inflation rate, it's around 2%, but let's just make it 2% or 1.9. Not a huge difference. Property taxes, now this is based on a percentage, and actually it works pretty well. So this is a $250,000 property. Property tax as in rate 3,300, maybe a little high. We could just ease that down slightly on that. Marginal tax rate, let's put that up to 30% because it's closer to the New Zealand situation. Now, closing costs, there are no costs to buy a home, so in New Zealand, 0. Cost of selling a home, fortunately we don't pay 6%. Let's put it down to about 2.5%, more realistic. Maintenance and fees, $2,500 for the first year in maintenance. A reasonable amount. Home insurance, given the new rebuild requirement, I might just stick that up a little bit there at about 1,600. Monthly utility 100, common fees, common deductions. In terms of renting, 1 month bond, that's what this is. It's not saying it's a cost, it's a lost opportunity of the money from that point of view. Broker's fee and renter's insurance, we'll leave those there. Well, actually, renter's insurance won't be applicable, so we'll take that down. So the upshot of this, which is the title implies it, based on this calculation, if you were looking to buy a $250,000 property, it would be better to rent if you could find a comparable property for just under $900 a month. And that's about $225 a week. So that's really how this calculator works. It's for you to put in the variables that would be applicable to New Zealand, which I've just done, and then start looking and saying, okay, let's do this as a real example. The current median price is 400, just over 400. Let's call it $417. Now, to buy a $417,000 house, you would be better buying if the equivalent property was rented for more than $1,400 a month. Equally, if you could find a property to rent of the similar level below $1,400, it makes sense to rent. So that's really how this works. And what I thought I'd just highlight in addition to leaving you to try it out is how various components affect the decision. So as I pointed out earlier, the longer you stay in the house, the more beneficial it's going to be to owning it. And you see this gradually as you move up. But what is most significant, obviously, is if you're looking to stay only for a couple of years, the significant difference is there, but certainly between 1 and 2 years, and that makes logical sense. Mortgage rates, yes, they're going to clearly affect the decision and make it more beneficial to rent when mortgage rates rise. As you can see here, that's starting to go up over nearly $2,000 when they hit 9%, come up to 10%, and they're up to $2,300. So if mortgages are going to rise to 8% or 9%, you need to put that factor in and consider that. The term of the mortgage, as indicated by this rather flat structure to these bars, doesn't really make a huge difference to this kind of calculation. But what is probably the most significant variable that does make a decision change is what does the future hold in terms of house price inflation. Now, taking this situation here, where I've got this median price property, I've put 8% as a mortgage rate. I said we're going to stay there. Well, let's take that to a more realistic 7 years. It doesn't make a huge difference, but it takes us to about $420 a week renting. So if you could find a property of similar quality to a medium price house and be paying less than $420 a week for it, you'd be better off renting. However, if you then look at what the impact of property price inflation is to that, it's quite staggering. So if you were back in 2009 when property price inflation was pretty much zero or negative, you would find yourself always better renting, because you'd certainly find a very nice property at $2,000 a month, and as it comes down to zero, that comes down to, or goes up to $2,500. So you're always going to have the threshold pushed up when inflation of property prices declines, and also goes into reverse, you see, quite staggering. But the market we're seeing at the moment, have seen for the last couple of years, is heading up, and has been heading up, although I think it is cooling significantly. So the variable here, if you start at this 2.5%, $1,800 a month, by the time you get to 3%, it's $1,500, and then down and down it comes until you hit 5% there, it's less than $1,000 a month, and it just keeps on coming down. So if property price inflation is going to be up at 6%, it halves it between 5 and 6%. So at 5% there, $955, and at 6%, $572, and lo and behold, hit 7%, and there's no way you are going to find a house for $167 a month, $45 a week, which would make sense from renting. You'd be better buying if you could consider that 7% in inflation in house prices was achievable over the next long run of the period in which you're in the property. Clearly that's a big uncertainty, but it demonstrates very visually and very effectively how obviously property inflation affects the purchase decision compared to rent. If I bring back to a more reasonable level there, as it started off at around 4%, I'll just highlight here the comparable variability of rental price growth is not so significant. So if you see rents are going to grow through demand at say 5%, it really doesn't make as much of a difference. And in fact, even at 10%, it doesn't make that much difference. It's not as significant a difference of the variability of house price inflation to this whole exercise. So that's really a pretty good guide through of how it works. An excellent application, well put together. As I say, it's entirely mathematical, so the fact that it's on a US website is not relevant. It's not a concern. It's a good calculator and a great tool to give you an insight into the question of rent versus buy. It won't help you make a decision, but as ever, you'll be better informed by having this access. The link to this application is posted as part of this article.